genetic reduction, developed straight computation, genetic manipulation, and the problem with it is it's not been done yet. Okay, it's of course we also want to have other problems. I want to mention the green ones, not competitive in sculptures. But let me just say this is what we want to achieve. Instead of having 200 chlorophylls like we have in present we want to have a small antenna so that each time they capture a photo they can actually utilize it. It's a very simple concept, and I should say that it has several, probably now about 20 groups are working on it. About in the 1990s, 2 groups started on it that I started working with. One was in Japan with Mitsubishi Heavy Industries that I consulted for, and they called it in the introduction to the paper, my paper from 1989. Okay, that we can do this. And they showed some data which looked interesting, but it was not quite up to par. It does not quite do what we want to do it. I did some work at Berkeley, starting in the 1990s also, and I won't go into the details, but we looked at highlight, low light on algae under stress conditions. They lose the antenna size, we can redo them, but the key to the whole problem was we can get a much higher photosynthesis saturation, but the problem is that the slope is down. The slope is photosynthetic efficiency. So did not work. We have done a lot of work over the years. This is some work I did with Joe Weissman again on mutants of cyanobacteria at different light intensities. We get an increase, but the problem is that the mutant was already weak to start with at the low light. It's not allowed. This is another experiment from Australia where they had some mutants induced in chlorophyll content and increased oxygen evolution, but they were not able to show that this actually works in outdoors. And the same thing with the mutants that we developed at Michael Hüsemann and others on this. And these mutants, basically what happens when you make a mutation, you don't get one hit, you get multiple hits, and you essentially end up with a cripple. It may be doing the thing you wanted to do, but it's not growing very well anymore. So the bottom line is that my view is that we need to do genetic engineering. I don't think synthetic biology is going to do it. This is an example of Craig Venter. Of course, everybody knows who Craig Venter is. The guy who sequenced the human genome and synthesized life recently, and he is into this game too because he is a program of ExxonMobil. But bottom line, the theory is good, but the problem is that the practice is still work in progress. Okay? Outdoor sustainable activity has not yet been achieved. Why? It's because of many difficulties. First, a genetic alteration of the photosynthetic system. We have problems with slow growth and other problems with the mutants. Maybe we have increased respiration, perhaps not, we don't know yet, and there's going to be competition with wild type strains. So, but, bottom line, there are no other options. Okay, fast mixing, the light pollution, as I explained before, are not practical and are much too expensive. So if this doesn't work, we're not going to get the high productivities that we really will need for algae production. So, let me see, do I have another 10 minutes? Yes? Okay, perfect. Okay, start a little bit later. So what are we talking about productivity now? What is the, and coming back to Craig Venter again, okay, he made a statement not too long ago that we can make about almost 200,000 liters per hectare per year of algae biofuels, okay, by using his synthetic genomics, synthetic biology approach, okay, and he makes some interesting comments about that we are at the point of thinking of evolution and all parts of humanity will be impacted. I don't think it was a promise, it was a threat, but whatever. But then he said you can even do better by going vertical. But he has a competitor, actually, Harvard Professor Church, who also started a company in algae biofuels, who are claiming 140,000 liters per hectare per year. And this is from a magazine article from a couple of years ago. And you can see my prediction there for algae is about 28,000 liters per hectare per year. Okay, and they're claiming that they can basically overcome all previous limitations of photosynthesis. Let me just say that some people have taken great objections to these kind of very hyperbolic statements, shall we call them, total nonsense. This is from Paul Falkowski, one of the real leaders in the field, and who said that this paper by Joule with George Church and his company claiming 12% solar conversion efficiency is just horrendous, it's nonsense. If we get 3%, I would be very happy. I would be very happy too, by the way. 3% solar conversion efficiency is a very good goal, and I think it is achievable. But the problem is that these kinds of statements by people, obviously very prominent, eminent people in the field are not only confusing and deceitful, they're creating expectations which we will not meet. So just as a little thing, and I should say, this whole thing also comes back to Professor Chesky in New Zealand, who published this paper. It is the most, I saw that the other day, it's the most quoted paper in the literature, okay, and he pulled out, literally, I don't know where, okay, these numbers of microalgae, 136,900 liters per hectare, okay, and well, maybe, maybe only 60,000, but these numbers came out of nowhere. He had no basis for anything, but he is the most preeminent person in the field. Okay? And what happens is that people hear this kind of things. Actually, this was a company that did this even before. The hype, they created the hype because they claimed 250,000 liters of oil per hectare per year. A company called Gainesville Technologies at MIT. I remember when in 1953 they did these experiments, which were very good. Here they did these experiments, which were very bad. Okay, they started selling licenses and for the bioreactors. The algae first didn't grow, then they did grow, then they couldn't be harvested, they ran away, and it broke $70 million down the drain. Okay, and of course, well, this kind of stuff happens, but it shouldn't happen. Here's basically, and I won't obviously go through all the details, but this is my view in terms of the best curve, the near term, the long term of what we can do in terms of the boxes in red are the only ones that we can really do something about from a practical perspective, either by genetics or night saturation or oil content, and basically maybe we can reduce the photo emission size saturation to 40% loss instead of an 80% loss. That's what we have right now as a minimum. And maybe in the future we can get up to 50,000 liters per hectare per year. But I think that in the meantime, 20,000 will be about right. So these are basically my predictions. And I should say, how are we going to achieve it? We're going to have to achieve it eventually by genetic modification. And I'd like to show this paper because my daughter is a co-author on it from a company called Aurora Biofuels, which have basically developed nanoperoxis as a model system, as a practical system for doing genetic improvements. And so they call it the green yeast as a protection therapy, and that's biology. And this is what we have to do. We have to do with algae what has been done with corn, with rice, with all our crop types. We have to domesticate them, and we have to use the power of domestication to increase the yields and to manage these cultures. We are not there. So, but where's the future? I would say, obviously, I like to look at the future because of my age. I like to look at it in the next 10 or 15 years. And I would say, this is one future. This was an advertisement by ExxonMobil. They spent $100 million on this advertisement, by the way. So it tells you where they are in this slide. And what the advertisement says is that we're going to secrete hydrocarbon fuels. And companies like Joule Technologies, which I just castigated a little earlier, okay, have that in Austin, Texas, where they say we can get cyanobacteria to excrete these fuels. And this has been a big piece of research now. A lot of people do this. Okay, and for example, this PNAS paper a couple of years ago on excreting fatty acids.